In the dry fields of Montana, where the wind never stops blowing, stood an old military base, Fort Redstone. Once, it trained the best soldiers in the country. Now it was just another camp for recruits, loud, sweaty, restless. That morning, before the sun even rose, someone unusual appeared on the shooting range. A tall, gray-haired man in a worn leather jacket. His movements slow, but precise, like a clock that still keeps perfect time. He carried no badge, no rank, only silence, and the kind of confidence that makes young men nervous. The guard tried to stop him. "Sorry, sir. This area's for active personnel only." The old man handed over an ID card, yellowed with age. Name: Harold Mace. "Your pass expired 40 years ago," the guard muttered. Harold just nodded. "Still works for the range." Minutes later, he stood behind the firing line. Young recruits laughed, whispering among themselves. "Look at him, gonna break his arm with that rifle." The instructor, Sergeant Clayton, smirked. "All right, Grandpa, show us how you did it back in 43. Harold said nothing. He picked up the M4, checked the barrel, adjusted the sight. Slow, steady, calm, then one shot. The target dropped instantly. Another shot, then another. 5 in a row. Every single one dead center. The laughter died. The only sound left was the wind scraping across the dirt. Sergeant Clayton swallowed hard. Where'd you serve, sir?" Harold finally spoke, voice low, cold, and tired. "In a unit that didn't exist." Then he put the rifle down and walked away. That night, the whole base was talking. Some said he was a sniper. Some said CIA, but nobody could prove a thing. Sergeant Clayton went straight to his commander, Major Hayes. "Sir, that man, he's not normal. He shot 5 targets dead center without blinking." Hayes looked up slowly. "What name?" "Harold Mace." The major froze. "Repeat that." "Harold Mace, sir." Hayes opened an old safe, pulled out a dusty file marked Operation Nightfall, Eastwood Unit, classified. Then he whispered, "If that man's alive, don't question him. Don't even think about it." Next morning, Harold returned, with a small box in his hands. Inside, 3 medals, a faded photograph, and 1 spent bullet with a word scratched on it. "Sever." "These are my reminders," he said quietly. "Reminders of what?" asked Clayton. "Of why I'm still alive." He showed the recruits how to move under fire, how to listen for silence, how to breathe before pulling the trigger. He didn't teach them war. He taught them survival. That night, Harold sat alone in his room, staring at that photo. 3 men in uniform, smiling in the dirt. On the back, Evan, Rand, Mace. He ran his finger across their names. 12 gone, 1 still breathing. He opened a drawer. Inside lay a single dog tag, scratched and almost unreadable. Operation Nightfall, 1971, Eastwood Unit. The ghosts of his past were never. 1971, Northern Vietnam. The air was thick, wet, heavy, and full of the smell of diesel and dirt. Night swallowed everything. No stars, no horizon, only breath, fear, and footsteps. 4 shadows moved through the jungle, silent and synchronized. They were called Eastwood Unit, a team that didn't officially exist. Even their commanders had no idea who they really were. Leading the group, Lieutenant Harold Mace, 29, calm eyes and steady hands. Beside him, Jacob Rand, the talkative Texan who always joked before a firefight. Behind them, Evan Rose, the medic, and Ben Holden, the radio man. Their mission looked simple on paper: infiltrate enemy territory, locate a hidden supply hub, and eliminate the local commander who'd been coordinating ambushes against U.S. convoys. Simple, deadly, no backup, no rescue. The jungle was a living thing, whispering, breathing, watching. Every branch that snapped, felt like an alarm. Jacob murmured, "How far, Lieutenant?" 3 kilometers, Harold whispered. "Feels like we've been walking that same 3 kilometers for a week," Jacob smirked. "Keep moving," Harold said. Evan muttered behind them. "When this is over, I'm opening a bar. Gonna call it Harold's Jungle." Jacob chuckled. "No bugs, no orders." Harold almost smiled. "And no ghosts." They all knew what he meant. At night, the jungle didn't need enemies. It made its own. Before dawn, they reached a ridge. Below, a small enemy camp, tents, trucks, 1 radio tower, 2 guards smoking by the fire. "Positions," Harold ordered softly. "Evan, check the rear. Ben, get the frequency. Jacob, cover me." They split without a sound. The plan was perfect, until the silence broke. A single shot echoed from nowhere, then another, then chaos. Tracer fire tore through the dark. Ben screamed, hit before he even hit the ground. "Contact!" Harold shouted. Jacob threw smoke grenades and dragged Ben back, but the ground exploded beneath them. Everything went white, then black. When Harold came to, everything was noise, ears ringing, eyes full of dust. Jacob was breathing beside him, barely. "They're closing in," Jacob wheezed. Harold lifted his rifle. He could barely see, but he didn't need to. Every movement, every shadow, one clean shot. He fired until the rifle clicked empty. They held for 3 hours. 3 men against 20. When the last magazine was gone, Jacob looked at him, calm, almost peaceful. "Run, Harry!" He grabbed a grenade and pulled the pin. The blast threw Harold 10 meters back into the mud. When he opened his eyes again, Jacob was gone. Only the compass on the ground remained, cracked, burned, the letter N still visible. Harold picked it up and pressed it to his chest. The sky was ash. The world was silent. 2 days later, a U.S. patrol found him, delirious, dehydrated, and still holding that compass. In the field hospital, Major Hayes came to see him. "Everyone else is dead," Hayes said quietly. Harold didn't answer. "Command's shutting down Nightfall. No record, no unit, no names." Harold looked up slowly. "So, we don't exist now. Not on paper. And if someone asks?" "They won't." Hayes leaned closer. "But remember this, Mace. If you're still alive, it means you owe the dead an answer." He was discharged quietly. No ceremony, no salute. He went home a ghost, working as a mechanic in a small town, talking to no one. Years passed, decades, but the war stayed, living behind his ribs. Sometimes he woke in the night, hearing Jacob's voice. "Don't trust silence, Harry. It only looks peaceful." And he would lie there, waiting for dawn, waiting for the jungle to stop breathing in his head. Until 50 years later, he saw that same compass tattoo on the wrist of a young soldier named Randall. That's when he understood. The past wasn't over. It was coming back. Fort Redstone went back to its routine. Morning drills, shouting sergeants, the clatter of rifles against metal racks. But something had changed. Ever since the old man showed up, the base felt different, quieter, heavier. No one laughed when Harold passed by anymore. Some recruits even saluted him out of pure instinct, though he wore no uniform. Sergeant Clayton, the same man who once mocked him, now took notes on every word Harold said. Harold taught them things that weren't written in manuals. He taught them how to hear before seeing, how to let silence tell you where danger hides. "Don't trust calm," he said once. "That's when the world loads its next bullet." Randall, the young soldier with the compass tattoo, followed him everywhere. Sometimes, after training, they'd sit in the empty mess hall, drinking black coffee that tasted like old iron. "Did you really know my grandfather?" Randall asked one night. Harold didn't look up. Enough to know he didn't quit. That's all a man really leaves behind. Proof he didn't quit. Randall smiled awkwardly, not sure how to respond. But in his eyes, something had changed, a flicker of respect, maybe even purpose. The next day, around noon, Sergeant Clayton came running into the shooting range, face pale as paper. "Sir, command wants you, now." Major Hayes' office was small and plain. One desk, a map of the training grounds, a half-empty cup of cold coffee. But the air inside was sharp. Hayes didn't waste time. He slid a sealed folder across the desk. Red stamp on the cover. Internal threat. Code. Seaver. The word hit Harold like a fist. He hadn't seen it since 1971. Hayes spoke quietly. 2 weeks ago, we started intercepting encrypted transmissions around the base. Someone's using our old frequencies, the ones from your time, and the code signature matches Seaver. Harold's jaw tightened. That was the same distress signal his unit used during nightfall. The one that was supposed to mean retreat immediately. Except the retreat never came. "Who triggered it?" he asked. "We don't know. But someone inside the base wants you to hear it." Hayes hesitated, then continued. 3 cameras were stolen from the perimeter. No alarms, no traces. Whoever did it, professional, surgical. I need someone who still remembers how ghosts move. Harold leaned back, silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat. "I'll do it my way. No forms, no orders." Hayes nodded. "Agreed. What do you need?" "Randall, Clayton, and silence." That night, Harold walked the perimeter. The wind dragged dust across the gravel. He stopped near the old storage building, the place where electrical cables were kept. "See that?" he whispered to Randall. "What?" "The ground, scuffed evenly, 12 inches per step. Military stride, but not ours. Someone's been walking this route on schedule." They followed the faint trail to a metal door. The lock wasn't broken, but one hinge was newer, replaced within the week. Whoever had been here had access. "Clayton," Harold said quietly. "No patrols tonight. 2 lookouts only. One on the roof, one on the bunker. No radios, just light signals. We let them come." By evening, a van rolled in through the side gate, a crew of electricians, 4 men, matching vests, clean paperwork. Perfect behavior. Too perfect. Harold watched them work near the transformers, then slip something into the wiring panel. When they left, he opened the metal cover and found it, a small carving, scratched with a needle. 13-7 Seaver. "They're already inside," he said. Randall stared at the mark. "Why leave a message?" "Because it's not for command," Harold answered. "It's for me." That night at 1:42 a.m., the first sensor beeped. Soft and low, footsteps barely audible. Too controlled to be random. "Left side shadow line," Harold whispered. A figure moved along the wall, tall, lean, careful. It stopped at the lock, pulled something from its sleeve. Click. One twist. Clean. Then the door eased open an inch. Harold was already behind him. He pressed a hand to the man's throat. Firm, precise. "Don't move," he hissed. The intruder froze. After a moment, he raised one hand slowly, showing a tattoo, a compass. The same kind. "Your boss has a strange sense of humor," Harold muttered. "Who sent you?" The man's voice was calm, too calm. A message, for Harold Mace. From someone who never let you come home. Harold's grip loosened just enough for him to breathe. "What message?" The man pulled a small waterproof envelope from his pocket. On the corner, handwritten, "Nightfall, after action, confidential." "They want a meeting," he said. "Tomorrow. Where Nightfall ended. If you don't show, Seaver will silence every frequency you own." Harold said nothing. He just stared at him, eyes like stone. Then, with one quick move, he knocked the man out cold. "Get him out," he told Clayton. "No noise. No paperwork. When only Randall remained, he asked softly, "You're going to that meeting, aren't you?" Harold nodded. "I never left it." He slid open the envelope. The first line read, "After Action Report. Operation Nightfall. Cause of Amp." Fort Redstone slept under a restless wind. The floodlights hummed softly, washing the empty field in pale gold. Somewhere far off, a coyote howled. One long, lonely note that faded into silence. Inside his small barrack room, Harold sat at the desk, staring at the opened envelope again. Cause of ambush. Internal leak. Source. Friendly. He whispered it out loud, as if testing the sound of it. The words tasted like rust. Randall sat nearby, too tense to blink. "Sir, what if it's a trap?" Harold smiled faintly. "It is a trap, but traps only work when you run from them." He stood, slung his old rifle over his shoulder, and added quietly, "Tomorrow we go where it all ended." Dawn painted the base in thin, cold light. Major Hayes met them by the gate, his jaw tight. "I won't stop you," he said. "But I can't protect you either." Harold nodded. "That's fine. Protection is what got us killed the first time." They left without ceremony. Harold, Randall, and Sergeant Clayton. Their destination, a section of the training range abandoned since the early 70s. Concrete shelters, cracked walls, rusted doors, relics of a forgotten war. The road wound through dry hills. The air smelled of iron and rain. Randall drove. Harold sat silent beside him, eyes fixed on the horizon. "Ever been afraid, sir?" Randall asked quietly. "Always," Harold said. "Fear keeps you alive. Just don't let it drive." When they arrived, the landscape looked like a graveyard. Half-buried bunkers, faded warning signs, the ground littered with empty shell casings, turned green by time. On one door, carved deep into the metal, was the same word. "See Ver." Harold stopped, ran his fingers across the letters. "Same hand," he murmured. "Same ghost." He turned to the others. "There'll be 2, maybe 3 men inside. Don't talk, don't shoot unless I do." Then he pushed the door open. Inside, it was cold. A single light bulb flickered from a wire. In the center stood an old table, covered by a dusty tarp. On it, a box full of dog tags. And behind the table, a man in a dark coat. Still, waiting. "You took your time," the man said, voice low, calm. 50 years, Harold replied. "I like to be punctual." The man smiled without warmth. Harold Mace. Still alive, still suspicious. Harold studied his face. Gray hair, sharp eyes, a scar across his jaw. Recognition came slow, like a shadow crawling out of memory. "Major Richard Sloan," Harold said quietly. "You were supposed to be dead." "I was," Sloan said. "On paper. Thanks to you." Harold took a step closer. "You set us up." "I followed orders," Sloan said. "Nightfall wasn't sabotage, it was an experiment. Command wanted to see how far a team could go without support. But someone up the chain decided to erase the results." "You're saying 12 men died for a test?" Harold's voice was steady, but his hands trembled slightly. "Not 12, Sloan said softly. 13. You died too, Harold. At least in their files. You just forgot to stay that way." The silence between them was sharp enough to cut. Finally, Harold asked, "Why now?" Sloan reached into his coat and placed a tablet on the table. The screen lit up with satellite images. The current Fort Redstone, circled in red. "Because history repeats itself," Sloan said. "They're reactivating Nightfall. Same code, same frequencies. Only this time it's not about war overseas. It's about control at home. The base is the first test." Randall took a step forward. "Control of what?" Sloan looked at him. "Of people like you. Soldiers who obey before asking why." Harold's eyes narrowed. "And what's your role in this circus?" "I'm dying," Sloane said simply. Cancer, no family, no redemption, but I can still hand the knife to the right man. Harold's jaw clenched. You think you can wash your sins clean by starting another war? No, Sloane said. I'm trying to end one. The one you and I never stopped fighting. When they stepped outside, the sun was already setting, a dull orange burning behind the hills. Randall looked shaken. Sir, do you believe him? Harold stared ahead. Doesn't matter. Truth isn't about belief. It's about evidence. He opened the tablet again. A list of system access points scrolled down the screen. Dozens of internal codes, each tagged with a name. One of them stopped him cold. R01, Randall K. Randall froze. That's my ID, but I never logged into those channels. I know, Harold said, which means someone's using your name. Clayton cursed under his breath. We've got a mole inside communications. Not a mole, Harold replied. A puppet. Back at the base, Major Hayes was waiting in the shadows of the command building. He didn't ask questions, just listened as Harold explained. If even half of this is true, Hayes said slowly, we've got an infiltration right under our feet. A ghost network piggybacking off our own systems. He glanced at the clock. Training for the new contractors starts tomorrow. Then tonight's our only window, Harold said. If they link their channel to ours, the whole base becomes a test site for whoever's pulling the strings. Hayes nodded grimly. Do what you must. But officially, this never happened. That night, the base felt wrong. Too still. Randall sat at the terminal, checking network logs. Then the screen flickered, once, twice, and a line of red text appeared. Sa ver, execute 00. Harold! Randall shouted. Harold appeared in the doorway, calm as ever. They're not destroying the base, he said quietly. They're taking it. The clock struck midnight. The hum of electricity deepened. Every monitor on the base blinked to black, except one. In the reflection of the screen, Harold saw his own face. Older, colder, but ready. The same soldier who once crawled out of the jungle was standing here again. And the night that began in 1971 was finally coming back for him. The wind cut like a blade. The base went dark, one building at a time, as if someone were turning pages in a book and closing them. Fort Redstone held its breath. Midnight struck. On the command monitor, a single line blinked red, steady as a heartbeat. C. Ver, link. Established Harold stood at the auxiliary panel by the outer comms tower. No uniform, no rank. Only an old rifle across his back, and a calm that did not belong to this century. Behind him, Randall and Sergeant Clayton worked the emergency line, an analog cable that could not be jammed by digital noise. It crackled in their hands like a living thing. Talk to me, Clayton whispered. Ghost channels everywhere, Randall said. New nodes, not ours. They're latching onto our grid and copying permissions. Harold glanced at the tower lights. One blinked out, then came back. A sync test. They don't want to melt the system, he said. They want to own it. He opened the tower hatch. The cold met them like water. Stay on the line, Harold said. If I go quiet, I'm not gone. I'm listening. Inside, the panel glowed with a soft, patient blue. The screen pulsed once, then wrote in clean white letters. Hello, Mace. 50 years is a long night. Harold typed, It ends now. A reply came instantly. Come take it. Same rules. You walk in. You walk out if you can. Harold closed the hatch and looked at the field. Past the tower, beyond the concrete ditch. A low building waited with a single light in the corner window. The old server block. Not used in a decade. Perfect. Clayton, he said, and hold this link. No transmissions unless I call it. To Randall. You're with me, the kid swallowed. Yes. Sir. They crossed the open ground in a crouch. The gravel was loud under their boots. The night carried every sound. Harold's body remembered the steps before his mind did. Short, even, no panic in the heel. They reached the door. Inside, the server room smelled of dust and electric heat. Someone had cleaned the floor. Someone had set a chair. Someone was waiting. "Welcome back," said a voice behind the racks. Harold did not need to turn to know. Richard Sloane stepped into view. Not a ghost now. Just a man with a gray face and tired eyes. "You hijacked a training base," Harold said, "to run a story you couldn't end." "I warned you what they were building," Sloane replied. "You needed to see the engine. You could have come in the daylight." "You and I never did anything in daylight." On the far console, a window opened by itself. Lines of code scrolled. Zao ver, initiate mirror, take primary. "Turn it off," Harold said. Sloane's gaze flicked to Randall, who stood tense at the door. "Your boy has the right name," Sloane murmured. "Randall. Rand. Leave him out of this." "I can't. They already put him in." Another window flashed. R01. Auth. Granted. Randall's breath caught. "That's my ID. They're spoofing it." "Not spoofing," Sloane said. "Borrowing. That's the new war. You don't replace soldiers. You reassign their shadows." He turned back to Harold. "You want it off? Then finish what we didn't. Pull the route." "Show me the route," Harold said. Sloane pointed to a hatch beneath the console. "Manual kill, the one we built in Eastwood. Still works if you have the key." "And who has the key?" Sloane smiled, small and tired. "You do." He held out a metal tag on a short chain. Old, scarred. The back read, "Nightfall, Master." Harold did not take it. "Why hand this to me?" "Because I set the trap," Sloane said. "And you're the only one who ever walked out of it alive." The man's voice shook once, then steadied. "I'm not buying my peace, Harold. I'm buying yours." For a moment, the server room held 3 men at 3 points of a triangle: the betrayer, the survivor, and the heir. The hum of the racks filled the silence like distant rain. "Randall," Harold said quietly. "Come here." The kid moved beside him. His eyes were glass and fire at once. Harold put a hand on the console. "Look, the top line lies. The second line sells the lie. The third line binds the grid. You don't attack the top. You cut the binding." He took the tag. It was heavier than it looked. "On my mark," Harold said. "Count with me." 3, Randall whispered. 2, said Harold. 1, said Sloane, almost gently. Harold slid the tag into the slot, turned it once, turned it twice. The room went white. For 2 long heartbeats, Fort Redstone fell out of time. Then the power returned, not to the mirror network, but to the real one. Monitors across the base blinked alive. The ghost nodes froze, then died. In the stillness that followed, Sloane exhaled. "That's it," he said. "The knife is out." Harold pulled the tag free. "Who else knows?" "No one who can put it back in time," Sloane said. He looked unsteady, and for the first time, Harold saw the disease in him. The way it stole breath, as quiet as a thief. "You're going to disappear again," Harold said. Sloane nodded. "This time for good." Harold stepped close. "I carried your shadow for 50 years. Sloane met his eyes. "I know. I won't carry it another day." "Good," Sloane whispered. "Then I did at least one right thing." He closed his eyes a moment, then opened them, clear. "Take the boy. Teach him what you learned too late." Harold did not answer. He didn't have to. They left Sloane in the chair with the servers cooling around him like a tide going out. Outside, the wind had shifted. The tower lights were steady now. No more red flash in the corner window. Clayton's voice buzzed over the analog line. "Systems stable, all clean. No losses." Harold looked at Randall. The kid was shaking. Not from fear now, but from relief big enough to hurt. "You did fine," Harold said. "I didn't do anything," Randall replied. "You were there," Harold said. "Sometimes that's the thing that keeps the world straight." They walked back across the field slowly. The gravel did not sound so loud. At dawn, Major Hayes filed a report that said only network malfunction, resolved, no casualties. There were no heroes in the paperwork. There never are. Harold packed a small room in 10 minutes. One box, one coat, one old bullet with one word scratched into the copper, sever. Randall knocked on the doorframe. "You're leaving?" "Yes." "Where do you go when you finish a war that never started?" Harold took a moment. "You drive," he said. "You listen. And when the road is quiet, you keep driving." He put the metal tag in Randall's hand. Not the master key, the dog tag he had carried for half a century. "Your grandfather saved me," Harold said. "He didn't do it so I could spend my life watching doors. He did it so someone after us could walk through them." Randall swallowed hard. "Will I see you again?" Harold gave a small, dry smile. "If you listen to the silence." He stepped out into the morning. The sky was a clear, impossible blue. A pickup truck waited by the gate, old and honest. He climbed in, started the engine, and let the road unspool. Past the fence, beyond the training hills, the land opened, yellow grass, thin rivers, the long line of a horizon that did not ask questions. He touched the bullet once, feeling the word under his thumb. "Sever," he murmured. "Cut the cord. Let it fall." The wind came through the open window, smelling of pine and rain. He let it carry the last of the night away. Behind him, Fort Redstone woke up to another ordinary day. Recruits jogged. Sergeants shouted. Flags climbed the poles. Nothing to see. Everything changed. And somewhere, in a quiet office, a young soldier with a compass tattoo opened a small box and read a note in a rough old hand. "Silence isn't the enemy. It waits for you to learn how to listen." Harold drove on, into the light. Not a legend. Not a ghost. Just a man who finally set a story down and let the circle close.